Welcome to Wickerson Studios. Michael Wickerson here, and I'm going to try and produce 3 short videos a week on Patreon and available for people that want to go deeper and learning Rhino from Grasshopper. Then I'll spend some time on my plugin models from when I worked with MGSM, learning Grasshopper with Grasshopper plugins, and then we'll go farther into using Visual Studio Code and using hops and Flask server to actually learn Python with Grasshopper and dig a little deeper into the Rhino 3DM API and see where that can go. So that should be an interesting video for those who want to go a little deeper. For right now, it's pretty simple. You just want to open yourself up a Rhino, and when you get your Rhino up and ready, all you have to do is type in Grasshopper, and Grasshopper will come available to you, and you may have a splash screen on here to start. But all I really want you to be able to get at, you don't need this hops node because that's for the more advanced, beyond intermediate Grasshopper with plugins. But I am going to use the Scribble Tool quite a bit, and I'm going to try and use what's available here so we can actually learn everything that's in the curve menu and all of the drop downs, so you can come to understand Rhino and not go directly into Rhino to learn how to write to actually create geometries in the Rhino environment, but you can actually create them parametrically and indirectly through the Grasshopper canvas. So that's exactly what we're going to do. I'm not going to spend too much time in the file of Rhino, the edit, the view, but we're going to spend a lot of time on curves, and we may end up and take this series up to surfaces. That's pretty much all you need. So let's start basically with the idea of what curve is, point object is, and what single point is. And we're going to replicate that over here in the Grasshopper canvas. And to start, we probably don't have to be too big. What I am going to do is play off and create a script that is fairly cumbersome and big, but I'm going to try and organize it all for you, and I might add a little bit of 4-dimensional animations as we go through. So let's really grab our Scribble tool. If you're not seeing this, you probably want to go into View and make sure you can see obscure components. If you don't have that on, you might miss out on some of these extras, and then drag this bar down. If it's up at 2, drag it down to like 4 or 5 length, and you can grab this ABC Scribble, pop it in there. We'll be using it a lot. And I'm going to take this size up to about 50. That starts my text, and I'm going to type exactly what we're doing. Rhino 7 Education Lab. GH underscore basics, because this is where you'll find the file on my GitHub. Curve, and I think I've called it 003 because it's my final draft. And we will use the Rhino menu bar and look at curve. That's exactly what we're going to do. And once that's done, that'll be fine. We'll take that and leave it here. And we're going to focus on, when we go over here to curve, we may jump in and study lines because point objects are pretty easy to start with. I probably could show those items first and how to do those, and maybe that would be good practice. So while we're here to the curve and giving it this title, let's grab that title, copy, and I'm just going to file. I just want to give this basically a name. We could put it anywhere. We'll put it in this one, but we'll just say tutorial. So that'll be the one for the tutorial. Tutorial. Oops. Didn't need it in big cap locks. Tutorial. And that would be enough to save that. But let's go in and let's file open. Let me take a look here for a second. I'm going to file open document, and I'm going to grab the GH basics of the curve to start. Let me see what that opens up. Give me a second. Just taking a moment. It's probably got a little bit of jazz going on there, so it's taking a little bit of time, and everything's thinking because I have two actually open. Oh my goodness. I'm going to test this while we're waiting. Test. Fine. Let me go back over here. Basic curves. I thought I would have had it. It's not here. Let me go to the desktop. Oh, that's probably the issue. 1 second. This is going to be under the Grasshopper basic files, and there's nothing in there right now. That's very strange. File, open documents. There they are. I want that one open. Cancel. Let me go into over here. File, open document. Should open there. There we go. Points. What could I do to create points? This is maybe too complex. Point, plane, vector, lines, curves, arcs. That was working from, actually I was working directly from that file, being a little too complex. 1 second, open. Let's try basic curves 1. Hit recovery. That's the point object. Okay, that should be fine. Should be able to go in there and have a little bit of fun. Curve closest point. We're going to actually start with the curve menu, point object, try and get through all these from single point. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're not going to go into curve to start. So even though we are going to the Rhino 7 Educational Lab GH Python curve 003, what I'm going to focus on is back over here. I want to basically have another large Scribble tool. And I'm going to simplify this and say, let's take a look initially at the point object. And this could be a little too basic to start. It might irritate people, but that's what we're going to start with, because over here on curves, that's the first object, point object, and single point, which will bring me to wanting to basically have that object that we're going to go deep into. And I also want to say that we're going to be dealing with what would be the Rhino commands. And that's okay if that's big as well. I should have done it all cap locks. There's the Rhino commands. And I'm going to dig in deeper down below, following through here. Curve, point, single point. I'm going to grab this. I'll probably just grab the regular size one and go in here and say we have to worry about the point, single point. Nice and easy to start. Now, how would you go about making one of those, and how would you make it from scratch? Now, of course, over here, you would just go in here, curve, point, single point object, and you put a point on the screen, and you would have a point. The other way for people in Grasshopper that become new to this, they learn about params, and they learn about these hexagon point containers, and they say, well, why don't we just set one point to that? And that's it. We've got that reference. This one can update, and this one will update. But that's not how you're going to work too parametrically if you end up taking that method to go about it. You're stuck in the Rhino environment, and you're stuck over here without a parametric model as to what you want. And what I'm going to do is also hover here, and we're also going to be going in here and trying to do multiple points. So over here, we'll go in again, we'll cut and paste, and we'll make sure we get ready to actually do double-clicking on Scribble Tool, multiple points. Good place to start. And now, because this is going to be something that we're going to look at Rhino commands, I am going to group it. I'm going to give a warning color that it's something to think about, yellow, and I'm going to flatten it a little bit. And then I'm going to set this to blob. So this all relates. As we move one, we move everything in that source. And you can see we're trying to go to Rhino 7 Education Lab up here and mimic parametrically what would happen over here. Well, they do have a wonderful node that you can add to this group, which we'll do in a minute, over in Vector tab. And you can say, create a point. Now that would be a much better way to create a point, but you're dependent on this ghosted image point, which is set at 0, 0, 0. And I could definitely add that to the group and say that's a pretty good solution to what we're doing. Now you'd think adding multiple points might be very similar, but this is dependent on parameters, and this is how we make things parametric. Because this is a number, and it says here up in the top left, you can see the 0.1, 0.1, and 0.1. We can actually go over the params and create a number slider, and the simplest way to do this is slide it in, and you'll get a default number from 0 to 1 with 3 decimal places. I don't make number sliders that way. I want my number sliders for my points to go from -5 ... to 5. And I like that range of what I can put things in, so I can play with that point and move it. So now as you see my point, you can see I have parametric control from -5 to 5. And I'm going to mimic that 3 times over here. But before I copy it, I want to go in right click, edit, and make sure it's a rational number to 3 decimals so it mimics the other one. And I have really nice finesse as I roll through it, which will allow for interesting ranges as well. And I'm going to cut. I'm going to select that, paste it twice, slide down, hover over all three, center, and space. I'm going to plug that into the Y and that into the Z. And then I'm going to take these 3 nodes and pull them way over here and give this section another category with about the same titles as here. I'm going to, I don't want to be in a command. Make sure that doesn't happen. I'm going to select my copy paste, slide this over here, and it should slide on the canvas, but I'm having a little trouble. I'm going to call this my parameters. And just to build my file nice and slow and steady, and I'm going to categorize this as the real warning, not just you want to play with the yellow, but you want to take these and group them and give it a group color of warning as to you need to stop and get set on this, set it to red, flatten it a little bit so it's not so intense. And there are my parameters, and I'm going to put that one to bubble blob as well. So that will drive that initial single point, and it's a much better way to then use a container and put that in here, and then you have your point container as to what you want. I am not going to put it through any transformations right now, which I may use. This is a great chance to slide in and test your skills at transformations, and I like to do that. So I'm just going to categorize something here. Transformations, just like there might be an algorithm or script that's a little more complex coming between here. And this one I'm going to box up as group it purple. And I may actually have domains, ranges, algorithms kind of tucked in here beforehand. So I'm going to take this object here, slide it down, take this object, slide it down, take this one, slide it down until it breaks. And I'm going to select left to right so I can actually just select those two right here. The transformation is going to move past here. Transformations are going to be here. And I'm actually going to copy and paste this. And I want to copy paste, slide this one over here. And I want to allow in an area for algorithms as I slowly create. And I'm going to take that one too and group that one as a basic purple. I'm not going to do the blob, but keep it square. And then here, I can move all my parameters down. So I'm just starting to get things set up. And you can move things in their groups. You can move them individually. And what I want to do after that is I want to know that this is the geometry coming out. It's not too exciting. It's kind of boring. It is parametric point. I can come in here and I can move that one around. I have pretty good control, but it's just intensifying what you normally would have done here in curve, point object menu, single point, and hard code a point into the Grasshopper environment, in the Rhino environment. We want to do that parametrically and allow for a lot of applications to what can happen. What I'm going to do here is grab this, and I'm actually going to copy and paste that. I'm going to give this the title of what geometry I actually want. And that's going to stay about the same size. And I'm going to take these two objects and I'm going to group them because I'm happy with geometries. I'm going to give it a kind of red, yellow, green feel. So this one's going to be green, as in I'm happy with those geometries. I'll give them a kind of blob approach because I've created those a little differently than the other ones. And we can put that one down in there if we want to start it. And then I think other people need to get into the habit of understanding the most powerful tools, which are panels, which tell you what something is exactly broken down, and the param viewer, so you understand you're looking at a path, a single path of one branch with one item on the end of it. And these are actually referred to as, we're going to call this one panels, because they're very important so you can work in Grasshopper. And then we're going to jump over here and grab this one and call this one param viewer, because that's what that is. And that should get us enough to start. I'm going to put this all in a group squared up as purple, and we're going to keep extending this as we go down. The next section that I'm going to put in is a bigger word right here. I'm going to make this my fun area and call this my sandbox. I'm going to make it sandbox, and I'm going to call that my playground. where you can take these files, play around, and create your own things. Now, what would I do with something like that? Probably nothing currently, so I'm just going to take it, group it, and give it the passive Wickerson Studio blue color that I use all the time, and soften it, and there we go. And I'm going to make that one playful to kind of encourage playing as a round node. And that gets us set up to think about what is happening, what can we do. I'm going to continue just a little bit here by saying how will we go in and build multiple points. And you might think, well, multiple points would be pretty simple. You could just take your multiple points item, and couldn't you just copy twice 2 points? And because they're coincident and we can add them to the group, we've got 2 points that might actually end up being something. But what could we do different to drive those points so they're actually not located in the same spot? And what I'm going to do is to make them kind of fun. I'm going to add to these algorithms a couple of things just to jive this up. And 2 of your most common math things that you'll be using if you think back to your math are domains, which I use quite often, or what are referred to as intervals when you're scripting, or ranges. And if I do any grafting or flattening, I'm going to make sure I try and type that in so I don't confuse anybody. But these 2 algorithms of ranges and domains might be kind of interesting. I'm not sure where I'm going to put it in, where I'm going to graft it. Let me think about this and where I've done it in the past. I'm going to make this one a little bigger, and we're going to use these same number sliders as we go through, but I'm actually going to create domains and put in 3 domains here. 1, 1, 2, 3. Grab all 3 and space them. Same way I did before. Line them up and space them. And then I'm going to grab my number sliders, but I want to have not only this number slider twice, and I should start labeling these, which I've not done yet. This should actually be X, and you can get in the habit of doing this. I would really recommend that you do it if you're going to be new to Grasshopper or Rhino, and Y and Z, or Z if you're Canadian, or anything else that likes to use that. I've got my number sliders running from this range, let's say -5 all the way up to 5. Let's put that slider into this domain and this one into this domain. And that's going to allow me to go into the sets node sequence and grab a range. And I can use that as my range. And now I've got more numbers coming out. And if I start to drive my points because of those ranges, I'm going to actually start by grabbing that and putting it into here. You'll see I get a range of numbers going across, which is kind of nice. The other item I have here is I do want to hard code, and I'm just going to double type and hit 12. I want to have 12 item steps in my ranges as I go. And I don't know why this is skipping out on me, but let's give me a second. I've got a fairly big area to build a big algorithm, and we may end up doing that. I'm going to grab these 2 items. Now I have to grab left to right if I just want those 2. And I'm going to copy and paste here, and I'm going to copy and paste here because I might want the same range, but I may want to have some finesse and change with it. So I'm going to change that through my domain. I'm going to take this one through my domain. I'm just thinking of multiple points and how I would build a point grid. And this is basically how I would do it. I would take those domains and I would flush them through 2 other ranges. I'm going to start borrowing these points, and I'm going to start overriding these points. Because this list has changed from a single data into a range, you'll see that the intelligent wire has gone to double. And I'm going to grab these and slide these into the Y, and I'm going to slide this one into the Z. And you'll see I have a pretty nice line curve of what I want to do. 1 second, I just want to have a look at exactly what I've done. There we go. I've got my points lined up here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do something fun with this point system that's here, is I would normally go and put the same lines of this one, this range into here, this one into here, and this one into here. But I wanted to show you something you could do to this point system, not just a range of a single multiple lines. I can actually use a set tool over here, which comes in almost everything, called graft, and I'm going to treat every one of those lines as if it had its own branch, and it's going to build me myself a point grid, which is pretty interesting if you think about that. You've got your initial lines going through there, and you've grafted it over to there. And now, when you think about it, as I start to slide around these, I have a lot of control and finesse. Actually, that one's not really going to change it. 1 second. to make sure that I'm following this point system. It'll probably only be in the X and Y. There we go. As it shrinks in the X and Y will have an effect as I shrink each point because I didn't push it into 3 dimensions. My other two I did not hook them up. Make sure I put my domain into my ranges and don't have the other ones. So as we take a look at this, now you have your finesse on moving that, shifting it over, shifting it up this way. And if you're not seeing it in the perspective, you can zoom extends all here. I'm going to grab here, and you can see that you have a pretty nice system. I'm going to bring this one over a little bit, and this one over a bit. Zoom extends all, or you can type in Z extends all, which will center all screens, and you can see you have pretty nice finesse, not only through a pretty intense point cloud, but in the X, Y, Z you can raise and lower this. You can move it in the X and Y, and we could graph this again to get a point cloud, which we're going to do later. So then when I've done this, I'll probably do a little transformation. Why not? Because it's ready for a transformation. Normally I would just take these items, take my point objects, grab them here, and we'd output them and say there's our geometry. Add that geometry to our group, and then grab these two panels, left to right, copy them, and let's see what we have. Well, we definitely have more points that are in there, and we can add this to here, add the group, and then a sandbox. I don't think I'm building anything out of that sandbox of points. I'm okay to end with that, but let's go into the point grid that exists here. Let's take all those points again, copy and paste, take this one, plug it into here, so we're dealing with all those points. Once again, grab the panels and the param viewer so we know what we're looking at. Let's zoom in and see that we're actually dealing with one branch with 11 items instead of one branch with one item. And now when we do this one, you'll see that it comes in as a dashed line, which is a tree. You actually have 11 branches, 11 different branches with 11 different items on each. And as we scroll through the panel tool, you'll see that there's actually a very interesting bar that kind of represents a branch. And if you're starting to visualize this and understand what's happening in Grasshopper at this point, you're realizing the power of that Grasshopper. And you can always take the param viewer and double click on it and change it into a tree, or you can right click on it and say draw a tree. And as you zoom in, you start to see the paths as they're built and all of the items at the end of the list. And you're able to start manipulating this through Path Mapper and what I prefer to use in set tools. One of the only tools I use now, and I prefer the most, is to get using the split tree to understand data by masks, and that will lead us into scripting the way I like to lead them in the scripting. Let's grab all these items and add them to the group. Let's grab this item and add it to the geometry group as a blob, and we've got something that we might want to end with by doing something a little fancy. Now, what did I miss in here that would have been fun? I had a chance to do something here which would have been a transformation. And one of the most common transformations you're going to use is rotate 3D. So I'm going to take all that data and I'm going to default to the center of where that center point is. So I can hit this and extract and hit that point and see that the center point is right there. I can take all these geometries and I can rotate them, and there's a nice default to moving from this geometry to this one. But because I'm a radian type person and I understand pi and I enjoy pi, even though some people like tau, I like pi, I'm going to put in a number slider of negative 2.00 dot dot 2.00. And that's going to give me, that's not what it was supposed to give me. We'll do, because I did it as a panel tool, negative 2.00 dot dot 2.00. And that's going to give us a wonderful number slider that is yet again another param, and that will be the rotation, and we can call that pi rotation. And you can give the other names to the other ones if you want, but I think I'm okay with that. This is our count. Probably need to put that in. And just preparing yourself for doing more scripting as you get farther in. I'm going to grab all of those and put that over to add to group, the blob, and we've got some nice parameters, and the only thing left to do is play around the sandbox in any capacity. So not only do we have this geometry here compared to that initial geometry, I'll put it through a rotation of negative 2 pi. You can see that we actually get a pretty nice pattern of objects that's happening, and that would change accordingly to whatever we end up doing. So nice little control on what's happening, and you still have the control of the other parameters. What would I do with this? Let's see what I did with it. I basically wanted to go in and use a simple tool of curves, getting ahead of myself a little bit, and I'll probably use an interpolated curve right here. And we can initially, let me see what I had. I can grab those final points, and I can grab those. I'm not going to grab it from here. I'm going to grab the actual points and slide it over. I'm going to create a line that flows through it, but I'm actually going to take it from all the lines and the data structure. And you can see that it's grabbing those lines in this order and rotating them. But if I did it the same again, but chose to flip the data, flipping the data is interesting, but the one thing you should do to flip data is you should simplify the data first. I don't think I actually have to. I think the flip data node works pretty nice, but because we're actually looking at all of these items, and these are all on the same path, 0, 0, 0, and then 0, 0, 1, all the way up to 0, 0, 10, technically I can switch those with these numbers and get 11 paths and go the other way. So what I'm going to do is just use this little tiny, very familiar Flatten flip matrix tool that happens. I'm going to disconnect with Control Shift, shove it in here, shove this one in here, and you'll see now I get these pattern lines and these patterns of lines. So I can go crisscross applesauce and make myself a nice little bridge. And I also, at the same level, can go in and at least get a surface for myself using the simplest of loft tools, which is kind of unnecessary. If I'm going to put it in, I'm going to have to move this back over to shaded, and I will have to flatten these curves, which is something you have to do. And I could have provided the node that did that. I could have gone into here, trees, and just like I chose graphed, I could choose flatten, and I could flatten that into here. I don't need to put the flatten on here now. I could plug it into here. So flatten that one and do the same for the other data, and we can basically flatten one way and the other way. And they produce pretty much the same geometries, so we really only need one. And what did I do with it when I was done? I think I went off and I made this crazy surface remap exciting thing that would be a geometry that could do something and do something pretty wild, which we'll get into a little later and build even more of a sandbox. This will be the beginning of the sandbox node, and we'll see where we can take that on the next one. So I didn't go too exciting, but I showed a basic setup of how we're going to do everything within the curve menu, sliding down and making it parametric with Grasshopper in a simple system of looking at parameters, looking at function names, algorithms that might build and assist in that. So I will take that and add that to the algorithm. I'll take the transformations and add it to the transformations right here. And that should be pretty good. This little pi is technically an algorithm, which I could tuck back in here because it's happening. I guess I could slide it in here, add it to there. And there you go. You've got a nice little system. Algorithms, further algorithms after getting it started, and a playground to start playing in to get some nice geometries as to what you want to do. And you have pretty cool power to work and move it. Anyhow, that's it for now. I'll take a little break, and thank you very much for watching, and we'll keep going with this. This is, like I said, the first section of getting into learning Rhino through Grasshopper, which is why I'm doing it. And well, I'll keep moving forward as we plug through all of those menu command line items under curve. Thanks for watching.